Sometimes life throws you a curveball that you never saw coming. But what do you do when that curveball comes wrapped in betrayal, heartbreak, and a life-threatening illness? How do you reconcile your anger and pain while still trying to do the right thing? What happens when love, trust, and even forgiveness are tested in ways you could never have imagined? This is the story of how a devastating betrayal by the one person I loved most in the world turned into a situation I could not escape, as I found myself not only fighting for my own healing, but also deciding whether to support a person who had broken my heart beyond repair. It all started with a phone call I never thought I'd receive. I had been separated from my wife for a while. Our marriage had ended in an agonizing breakdown after her affair, and we were navigating the complicated process of divorce. One day, I received a call that would change everything. My wife had been rushed to the hospital after suffering a panic attack. The news struck me like a thunderclap. All the anger, resentment, and heartbreak that had built up over the months instantly flared. I had already distanced myself from her, refusing to let myself be pulled back into the drama. But something about hearing that she was in the hospital forced me to set aside all the emotions I had been carrying. I couldn't just ignore it. I had to go. I packed up some essentials and made my way to the hospital, unsure of what to expect. When I arrived, she was still unconscious, hooked up to various monitors. My first thought was, she looks so peaceful. And for a brief moment I was reminded of how much I used to love her. The anger, though still present, took a back seat to the person I once knew, the person who used to bring me so much joy. She woke up in a daze, clearly surprised to see me there. The guilt in her eyes was evident, and I could see how much she needed comfort in that moment. She begged me for a hug, for forgiveness, and for any chance at redemption. I could feel the urge to be cold, to push her away. After everything she had done, I wasn't sure I could forgive her. I tried to stay composed, reminding myself that I wasn't there to fix what had been broken between us. I was there to make sure she was okay. I wasn't going to let myself get caught up in her emotional needs again. But as she wept and spoke, I couldn't help but wonder, how did we get here? How did we go from a happy couple to a shattered marriage? She told me that the panic attack had been triggered by the overwhelming events that had unfolded in her life. Not only was she dealing with the aftermath of our divorce proceedings, but she had also been diagnosed with something far worse. Something that I never expected to hear. During a visit to the gynecologist for routine tests, they found something they didn't expect. Her doctor had suspected an issue, but nothing could have prepared me for the news. She had aggressive ovarian cancer. I thought I misheard. Cancer? My mind reeled as I tried to process the shock. I had to leave the room to compose myself. How could this be happening? This woman who had betrayed me was now facing something so life-altering. It wasn't right. I wasn't sure how to feel. There was the part of me that wanted to feel satisfaction, to know that she was suffering, that life had somehow brought her to this point of reckoning. But another part of me couldn't ignore the humanity of the situation. Cancer was serious. Aggressive ovarian cancer especially was a death sentence. I knew that. And I knew that whatever happened, I couldn't just walk away. I wasn't that person, even though part of me wanted to be. I had to ask myself, could I really just ignore this and move on? Or would I stay and help her through this incredibly difficult time, even though she had broken my heart in the worst way possible? We talked for hours discussing the gravity of her situation and what needed to happen next. I was still emotionally shattered, but something inside me told me I couldn't just abandon her. Not like this. So, I made the decision to help her, to offer my support through the surgeries and chemotherapy that lay ahead. But there were boundaries. This wasn't about reconciliation. I made it clear that my willingness to help had nothing to do with us getting back together. Our marriage was over. The betrayal had cut too deep. However, I felt a moral obligation to be there for her during this fight. She was scared, confused, and facing the unimaginable. She had begged me not to abandon her, and in some strange, twisted way, I could understand why. Her life was falling apart. Divorce, illness, and a future filled with uncertainty. She didn't want to face it alone. And though I was emotionally scarred, I couldn't turn my back. As I started to help, the reality of the situation only became more intense. The doctors confirmed the cancer had spread but hadn't yet reached critical organs like the bladder or liver. It was stage 2B, still treatable but serious. The treatment plan was aggressive, and she would need immediate surgery, followed by chemotherapy. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to feel anything for her again. But I also knew that this was a life-or-death situation. How could I live with myself if I didn't help her, especially when I still had some residual care for her from the years we spent together? In the days that followed, I became her caretaker in a way that I never anticipated. I was there for her during surgeries, stayed at her side through the painful chemotherapy sessions, and managed the emotional fallout of everything. But it wasn't easy. I was constantly torn between doing what was right and suppressing the rage I still felt from the betrayal. Every day, I watched her deteriorate. Her hair fell out due to the chemo. Her body weakened, and yet she clung to life with a ferocity I had never seen before. It was heartbreaking, and while part of me wanted to hate her, another part of me admired her strength. It was during one of my late-night shifts at the hospital that I stumbled upon something that would further complicate my emotions, a text message from her affair partner. It was from a number I didn't recognize, and it was clear from the content that they had been in contact recently. The message was an apology, something along the lines of, "I'm sorry for everything. I never should have treated you the way I did." She had blocked his number, but the text still lingered. And with that, the door to everything I had thought was behind me flung wide open again. I wanted to feel angry. I wanted to confront her, ask her why she kept in contact with him. But I knew, deep down, that it didn't matter. She was sick. She was dying. What difference did it make now? Despite the emotional chaos I was still navigating, I decided that helping her through this period of her life was the right thing to do. It wasn't about rekindling our love or finding forgiveness. It was about being the person I wanted to be, even if I wasn't sure who that was anymore. As the weeks went by, her condition worsened. The chemo was taking a toll, and after another round of surgery, the doctors confirmed that the cancer had advanced. She was now in a fight for her life, one that she might not win. I continued to care for her, but the emotional toll was immense. I had given up on the hope that we would ever reconcile, but I couldn't just walk away. Not like this. Not when she needed me, even if it wasn't in the way she once did. Eventually, I made the difficult decision to move back in, even if it meant extending our separation period. I spoke with my lawyer about how we could continue with the divorce, despite everything, and we agreed that as long as I didn't live as husband and wife with her, it would not interfere with the proceedings. I wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing, but I knew that I couldn't abandon her completely. It was hard to keep my emotions in check, especially when old wounds kept opening up. But I kept reminding myself that I was doing this out of moral obligation, not love, not reconciliation, but because it was the right thing to do. In the end, I don't know what will happen. She may live, she may not. But the one thing I have learned from this whole ordeal is that sometimes doing the right thing doesn't come without sacrifice. It doesn't come without pain, without compromise, but it does bring clarity. I know that I will continue with the divorce, and I'll make sure that everything is in place for my own future. I can't live in the past forever, and I can't pretend that everything is okay when it's not. But I'll keep going. Because in the end, sometimes the hardest thing to do is to be the person you know you are, even when it feels like you've lost everything. So, here I am. I've made my peace, and now I wait to see what comes next. It's been a journey, one filled with pain, betrayal, and unexpected responsibility. But at least now, I can walk away knowing that I did the right thing. The story ends here, but the emotions linger. What would you do in a similar situation? Could you find it in your heart to offer forgiveness, even after the deepest betrayal? Would you be able to walk away? Or would you do what you know is right, despite the emotional toll? The choice ultimately is yours.